Does this sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just in
Yeah.
these boys. Okay.
No, that's totally fine.
All right.
Hi everyone. Welcome to Fuck Wellness. I'm Mallory.
I'm Makena.
And I'm Lara.
And we're on our bajillionth episode of Masculinity. I'm kidding, but like it feels like forever. Oh wait. Did just Lara freeze?
Yeah, just Lara
Okay.
froze.
I was like, oh no.
Which is weird because we're on the same Wi-Fi, so
Lara's just chaotic today.
my Zoom is superior.
Yeah.
I was having a great day.
Yeah.
It's going
This
downhill
doesn't
really
have
fast.
to ruin it.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah. You're good. So today on the podcast, we have a friend and also a cool boy guy. My worst intro ever.
We have a cool boy on the pod.
No, a longtime friend and, uniquely qualified masculinity expert, Brooks Nevrly, on the podcast. Brooks, want to say hi?
Hi. Hello. I'm that cool boy guy, overqualified person that Mallory just giggly referenced.
Yeah, this is what happens when we record at 8 p.m. My time is I just get really out there. Brooks, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself for the listeners?
Sure. So I'm from the Chicagoland area. I grew up in Downers Grove, which is a suburb of Chicago. I've been living in the city for the last 5 years now. I'm a high school teacher. So I teach at an all boys private school on the south side of Chicago. I've been there for about 5 years. I teach English. As well there, I coach boys volleyball in the springtime. I run our student council. And then I'm the student activities director. So I just kind of represent all of the clubs that at our school, making sure what they need. Trying to think if there's anything else interesting that I could say. But yeah, I'm super excited.
Brooks, what do you like to do for fun?
I love to hike outside.
Nice.
I've been to 31 national parks, I think 31.
Ever been to Boulder, Colorado?
I have been to Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, Lara, take a step back.
Sorry.
Boulder is great. The Flatirons are very, very cool. Fun story is that when my parents were going to get engaged, my dad was going to propose in the Flatirons, but they got lost.
Classic.
So they were very, very upset, and that did not happen.
Where did he end up proposing?
Just back in Downers Grove, where I live. Super easy, simple.
Did you know that Mal got engaged?
Get lost.
Yeah, Mal got engaged in Colorado.
Basically in the Flatiron.
Basically in the Flatirons, on the backside of the Flatties, as they say it here.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, so in the summer times, I try to get out and get out of the city as much as I can. My family owns property in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan that we go to all the time. So I spend my summers up there as well. Some things that I do to kind of like keep me sane is my dad has kind of gotten me into collecting vinyl, which is not a lucrative hobby by any means. And then I'm also very into photography. I've gotten into that in the last couple of years, in more so in terms of like manual photographs. So that's been also an expensive hobby.
Manual photograph?
So you have two types of cameras. I actually
Here we go.
I think I have my manual camera here. So the difference between like a manual and what they call like a point and shoot is a point and shoot like auto focuses. So it adjusts like the amount of light into the lens. It adjusts. It's the same kind of shutter speed. just very, very user friendly and easy. It just doesn't take as good of pictures. So this is what you would call, I guess, a manual camera. The main things are like on the front here. You have these like little knobs that either focus or they adjust the aperture, which is like how much light comes into the camera. So you have to do that kind of manually. In the lens of each, so like right there, in the viewfinder, there would usually be like a light sensor that you would look through, and it would tell you if you need to up kind of the aperture or lower it, or up the shutter speed and lower it. Mine's broken, so I have to kind of just guess and check which
It's extra
for the first.
manual.
It's extra manual. Yes,
Yeah.
It's manual extreme. That camera I actually bought in a thrift store in Northern Michigan for like $30. And it's been kind of fun ever since. And then
for those of you who are just listening and not watching, Brooks just got really passionate about his camera. You could tell that he has a deep love for it. So
I am.
I just feel like maybe head over to the YouTube channel just for like that section. It's crucial.
Yes. And
so quick pitch.
It's funny because I pretty much take it wherever I go. I take either one of my cameras, and then I have a Polaroid camera, like an instant camera that I take. I don't keep as much of the pictures now.
Sorry, for the one that you showed us, is that like film photography? Like do you develop that yourself?
So I used to take it to this CVS. Shout out the CVS on Western and Chicago.
Yeah,
because they
listen, I heard.
They do. Because I was pretty much in there pretty much every 2 weeks. And sometimes they would give me my photos for free. Because they were like, "Oh, you've been in here a lot. Just take these." And I was like, "I don't think that's how that works, but okay." So I've been in there a bunch, and then I just recently went to this kind of local place by my apartment that does better scans. Just because the scan quality is a lot different. I don't know how to do it myself. I would have to go to like an actual facility for that and like learn how to do that, and that's just something that I'm not interested in, I guess, because it takes like a long time to do. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. I was this podcast I was listening to, they were talking about this place in New York City where, because it does take a long time to develop your own film photographs, and it's this place that it's called like exposure therapy, I think, and the whole theme is like take photos, like sit with yourself in that time that it takes to like develop them, and it's like some kind of like, therapeutic self-discovery in that you are learning how to do your own exposures. It seems cool. I'd be down to go.
Yeah, I can definitely see that too, because you're alone in a very dark red room for what I would assume would be hours. So
yeah.
It's kind of its own meditation in itself, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Masculinity.
Mel, I just need to ask you, do you want to talk about masculinity today?
No, actually I do, because I'm curious about a few things.
Okay.
You're really selling it though. Keep it up.
Okay. It was more of my like, here's an idea voice. I feel like it was misread on the pod. I'll work on my tones in the future. Okay, Brooks. Tell me about your definition of masculinity / like what that has looked like throughout your life, your relationship to masculinity.
So I guess I'll start with just saying disclaimer. My views on masculinity have not very much changed since I've been in this all boys school. I think it's very much the same as it is from when I came into where I am right now. I think that for me, it's based upon, I was thinking about this a little bit earlier. It's based upon 3 different things that kind of I moved through my life with. My dad is a very influential figure in my life, so I kind of got a lot of the things that I take within my job from him. He is a high school teacher as well. So that kind of correlates very easily. One of the things that is like buried in my head as a child is accountability. So he would always say, like, can you, when he was yelling at my brother and I for something, did you show he would use this word, initiative, to take the trash out or to stop your mom from washing those dishes? Um, and I think that that's one of the things that I think first kind of keys in with me, is that um, someone who is, I guess, inherently, I don't know, wants to access that masculine side of them is accountable, because he was that pretty much to a T. But then the other side of it kind of comes with the stereotypical definition of masculinity, which is how men are not very vulnerable, especially at a young age. My mom is like the standard of that. She's very, very stoic. And even though she does not identify as a man, she kind of instilled that value in me of kind of hiding some of your emotions, I would say, not because she was preaching that, but just because she didn't let things bother her. So I think another factor that I think about a lot is vulnerability, which is like an uncertainty of risk of like emotional exposure. Once you're seen in that kind of spotlight, everything kind of changes. And I think when I was in high school, I associated that vulnerability with pain, which led me to some mental health, I guess, challenges when I was there. It felt, I guess, good to kind of hide that pain, because it fed into that kind of masculinity of it's not that I don't show pain, it's that I just deal with it myself. And I think that those two kind of came to a crossroads of authenticity, which is like true to your own values of who you are. And I think that if you are true to who you are kind of individually, it puts you in places where you find yourself, I guess, the most fulfilling and happy. When I played volleyball in college, we were a first year program, so someone had to kind of step up and be a leader in that sense, and lead young men, I guess you could call them, in terms of we're all being the same age. And I think that that's just kind of happened for me. I was one of our captains. I think that just kind of happened because I was just authentic, and people kind of rallied around that. So I don't think that I know that some traits people say could be inherently, I guess, masculine. But for me, I think it's very it's fluid, is in of that sense. And I think that another definition of masculinity that I kind of subscribe to is being self-reflective. I think that if you can be honest with yourself, then you can be honest in how you call yourself a man, or how you want to present yourself to other young men. And one of the ways I do that is I write poetry a lot. I know that that's not inherently seen as a masculine thing, but I think that allows me to kind of understand myself and how I want to present myself as I guess, in a sense of a role model to other young men. It just kind of puts me in that space of just allowing people to be seen, which then I kind of carry into my teaching style every day, or at least try to every day.
So like, because I feel like you're around, whether it was like in college with your volleyball team, or in your day job right now, like at an all boys school being a teacher, or like in the way that I've kind of seen you be a leader at Camp Michigania, like doing all of your jobs there. What are ways that you kind of touched on this, but like, what are things that you're kind of like going into your day being like, I can sense that people are acting in this way, maybe in trying to like adhere to being masculine or being whoever they want to like show up as, and like how am I then trying to kind of show them a different way, whether it's like vulnerability, like how do you think that you're showing them that way? Because I when I think about you, it's like you're an amazing leader, and I think that it's so much of like that leading by example. So are there particularly things that you kind of go into your day being like, I want to show people this side of me so that they can show up a little differently maybe?
Yeah, I mean, at our school, it's difficult for kids at certain times to open up, just because they are around boys. But from my experience, it's a lot easier for them to open up at a single gender school. I think it's a lot easier for them to go to teachers that they see as role models and talk to them about certain things. I can give an example about a student who had kind of father issues in his life, and he just kind of busted in my room like sobbing tears. And I think that happens maybe not as severe as that, but what I try to do to allow kids to, or that allow, what I try to do to allow kids the courage to do that is I just try to make sure that every kid is seen every single day, kind of how I like to say. And that could be as simple as just saying hello, or just talking to them for a couple seconds, or just, wait, can I swear on here? Is that okay?
Yes.
Brooks, what is our podcast name?
I was just making sure. Or just like shooting the shit with them from time to time. I think that allowing them to be seen as they would want to be seen, as cliched as that sounds, works a lot, and it works a lot in a school setting, because kids go throughout the in terms of their life, they spend more than 3/4 of their life at school, whether that be in school or for practice or for anything. So I think just allowing them to see that I see them in all facets of life, not just calling on them for participation of an English question, but I think it is simple as that. And I think kind of people take that for granted because teachers have so much going on in their day-to-day lives, that I just being as open as you can to just establishing an interaction, I think goes a long way.
Douglas is not being super great today. He's been good all day, and right now he hears Brooks talking and he's like, I need to get rowdy. I have a question and an observation, and they're completely separate. So first question is, what position did you play in volleyball?
I was a middle.
Nice.
I already
No,
knew the
I'm just
answer.
You did, Mal?
I was libero.
Yeah.
I was libero. I was just kidding.
For real?
It's like legendary.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh. Why is it legendary?
I don't know. I just always knew. I didn't know that term before Brooks.
Oh.
I learned that term at camp, and we play volleyball at camp. It's like a big thing. And so it was always like Brooks was the libero. I don't know. I just knew that. It was just a thing.
Yeah. Funny enough, I played baseball pretty much all my life, and I got cut for my travel team when I was a freshman because I was too small. That's what they told me. And so my dad was the volleyball coach, and so I had played in like his camp, but I had never played really club before, and so I just tried it out full time.
Nice.
And then liked it a lot.
And you just ended up being a great passer.
Correct. Just find your niche. That's what
Yeah, there you
volleyball's
go.
about.
My other kind of observation is to go back to kind of what you were saying before, I really liked kind of your observation on initiative. And I think, my thought is not fully formed, but I think that is something that is a trait that I think is extremely valuable, and also one that I feel like gets skipped over quite often because it really could apply to so many things. Like, you have the initiative to be curious about yourself and your life, or be curious about others, or learn more, or learn how to maybe have a little more empathy, or, you know, whatever it might be. I think that that's like such a key thing that you honed in on, of like, yeah, the initiative to do something, or to think about other people. I think that like, even the example of the dishes or all of those things, I think that that's just such a cool observation. And I don't know, we haven't heard it yet these 2 months. So I think that's fun.
Well, and with that too, you see it in the classroom too, with just asking for help, even if it's whenever we take essay tests or anything. I will always say, if you need help, like please let me know. I will be happy to help you. And some kids very much take advantage of that because they see one person do it, and then it kind of dissipates. And there are some kids that never ask for help, just because they think that they don't need it, which I guess is inherently cliched masculine in and of itself, I guess you could say, in terms of doing things on your own. But I think that kind of just goes back to, if kids are able to see somebody that they care about be vulnerable, and that can be facilitated in a constructive environment. Not only do kids learn better, but boys learn better in general.
This might be a silly question. I just don't know the answer, but in an all boys school, are you guys having open conversations about fostering relationships between boys and as men? Sorry. And like, is that kind of an open conversation, or is it kind of just more so in the background of just like the day to day? Obviously it's part of things, but we're never explicitly saying like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, you know, how we can be better boys and better men and all of that.
So I would say, short answer is that it's in the background. I would say more so. Our kids, if they play sports, which sports is a big selling point at our school. It's one of the main reasons why kids choose to come to our school. They bond in those practices way more than they do maybe sometimes in the classroom. Just in terms of how deep some of the bonds are. It's never really talked about explicitly at school. Where we do indeed do that is we do something called Kairos, which is kind of a retreat for the boys that they have to go on once in their 4 years at Mount Carmel. And there they kind of basically just talk about themselves and their feelings. There's a lot of different things that they do to try to open up. They write letters to their parents write letters to them. They talk about good things that have happened to them, bad things that have happened to him, and that just kind of builds that support and trust that they have in their classmates. Classes, at least in terms of the graduating classes, are very, very close. Even though they may not know it as much, they know a lot more about their fellow classmates than they will lead on. And even though the school is inherently small, they truly know and can understand how their classmates work, even to the point where they can push their buttons wholeheartedly with something that's very, very simple. As much as there is kind of building each other up, there is an equal portion of like, I'm going to walk right by you and smack you in the back of the head, which it kind of goes hand in hand with kind of how that is. And yeah, it's interesting to see how they bond in different ways. There are some kids that are very close to each other that play no sports, and they develop a closer bond. That I can remember, there's 2 students in particular that they come back pretty much every 3 weeks, just kind of like asking how the teachers are doing. So that connection is very, very close. The Catholic school sphere is weird in the sense that there's a certain stigma attached to different Catholic schools that they either subscribe or don't subscribe to, based upon their own factors. Like, our school is very much considered a athletic-based school. There's other schools that are also considered very more academically centered. And they take that to heart. They love their school to death. Even if they say every day when they walk into my class, I want to go home. Which I don't think you get as much in a co-ed school, which is very strange in how that works. I don't even know if that trait is inherently masculine or not, but I've seen it a lot more just in the boys that I interact with.
That's how Ryan is. Ryan went to an all boys Catholic high school, and they are just die hard, like, supporters of their high school in a way that, like, I feel neutral, maybe positive towards my high school.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if that's generalizable or just anecdotal, but I was going to bring up, actually, on our first episode of Masculinity with Ryan, we talked a little bit about, like, his experience going to an all boys school and how it's kind of interesting to think about, like, if you have a group of people who are all, like, for the sake of this podcast, like, all boys, there's, like, more variation in that group, or they're, like, allowed to have more variation than if you put in, like, another group of people that really, like, we'll say, like, girls for this example. Like, it's almost like the stereotypes become much more clear when there's stark differences, like, or like stereotypical differences between the two groups. And I think Ryan had pointed that out on our first podcast. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to think about, that, like, the stereotypes aren't as, like, reinforced. They're reinforced, but there's, like, more variation to them because there's just more people that are allowed to express who they are without having the comparison of a whole nother group of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely tell when you walk into a room who the athletes are, and you can definitely tell who's in the robotics club, and you can tell, like, who doesn't do anything at all in terms of what they participate in. But I think that that's, in terms of what my school is, it's very organic in how these kids interact with one another. Maybe it's awkward if they're put in a certain group, but it's not awkward to the point where they don't want to interact with people that are different from them. I think that also comes with the closeness of how there's not a lot of people in the school, and you basically grow up with these people kind of every single year. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. You can definitely see the stark contrasts in just the temperaments of kids, even if they will never interact with each other kind of outside of school. They still do organically in school, which is cool to see.
I have, like, a question, but I don't really know. I don't know how to ask it. I think my question is kind of geared to the idea of, like, again, talking still about, like, the school and the place you teach at, like, how do you feel? I don't know how to ask this
Are you
question.
looking for a question about gender?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, say, there's hundreds of kids at this school. Just statistically, I'm sure there's some people who are feeling a little bit, like, gender variant within that. And it's like, I go to a Catholic boys' school. Like, how, and I don't want to, like, think about someone's experience because I wouldn't know how to have that experience or what that's like. But, like, I'm just so curious about, like, how that might look when you're trying to, like, it's a very, very developmental, like, super important time in your life. How would one go to a school like that and not feel like you have to put that whole part of your identity on hold a little bit? Because, like, maybe there's, like, a lot of different, like, variants of the type of people, and because it's not an all gender school, like, there's a little bit of room where it's like I might feel more comfortable being a little bit like more this or that, like as we were just saying, like how Ryan was saying, but I'm just like, and I do not know if this question made any sense, but like I'm just curious about what that would look like if, you know, we're at this really old boys' school and I don't feel like a boy going to school, but I'm being referred to as one, and that's on my t-shirt, and I'm doing all, like, that's the language that I'm around. Like I'm curious about that, and then I'm also curious about like if, being at a school like that at a time like that, does it make like, because I didn't even ask Ryan this, but like would it make going to then an all gender school after like feel strange? I'm curious about that too, like what that adjustment looks like. That's two big questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, no, but those are cool. I'm gonna try to relate it towards, first of all, I guess, sexual preference, and then try to answer your question. We have had gay students at our school that are you would if you would think about them in terms of what the factors are, right? All boys, Catholic. You would think that there would be some friction. But not only in my experience, but in the past experiences from talking with the administrators, there isn't. Everyone kind of at that school is championed for their diversity, as it also presents itself because our school is very diverse. We're about 40% Black, 40% white, 20% Hispanic. And we have kids from over 100 different area codes that are coming to our school. So that, which I could see how for some parents that would be a fear, right? Is my kid that I love very much going to get judged even though they came to our school as heterosexual and now in their sophomore, junior year, they feel differently? That has happened, and at least to my knowledge, there have been no issues. In terms of the conversation about gender, I have no idea, if I'm being completely honest. That question is like trying to put a round peg in a square hole, right? I mean, it just saying the words out loud, kind of how like you were saying, it doesn't make any sense of why it would work, right? But just seeing the potential in it, in something at least controversial, right? In terms of the labels of all boy and Catholic, I think it has the potential to work. We also have at our school a lot of different opinions. We have kids that come from families that are equal parts very progressive and very conservative. So I don't think I could give you an answer on how that would look, because to my knowledge, I don't think it's happened yet. Would our school find a way to make it work? Absolutely. Would it also be made into this kind of big publicity stunt in terms of kind of what that looks like? I also don't know. I think that if that word got out about that potentially happening, I think that there wouldn't necessarily be outrage, but there would be some people having concern over what that looks like. I don't think that the students would care in terms of making a big deal about it or making an issue, just because they deal with so many differences about someone that they don't know. I mean, we get kids that come from rural Indiana to the south side of Chicago, right? If you just put those words on the table, those are very inherently different people in terms of just the experiences that they have. But I don't think I could comment on what that would look like, because even just saying it out loud, you kind of like cringe a little bit of like what that could potentially fall into. But I don't think with our kids and who I know, I don't think it would be as much of an issue as the words sound when you say them in a sentence together, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. it's one of those things I think where it's like it could sound just so complex of like, how will this be, published or politicized or like sensationalized? But it's like, or it could just be like, I'm going into my favorite teacher Brooks's classroom today and I'm gonna tell him I have a new name and new pronouns, like, and then everyone will do that, or it could be that.
Right.
you
Right.
know so
Yeah, it's also the fact that like if someone was transitioning from male to female, I don't know if they would be necessarily allowed to attend Mount Carmel, just because of what they identify in that current moment, even though that they've made all of these friends and people may see them as something else. Yeah, I don't know how that would operate. That's a question I always like to say that's above my pay grade. That's something that I don't get paid enough to answer for.
It's really interesting because I think that education in schools are very behind in a lot of these things and these subject areas and these conversations, because I think it's like kids right now have access to so much on the internet and have so, like, hopefully they have families that are supportive and are having, important conversations. But I think that school in general is just behind because it's like, it brings up all these logistical questions and all of these systems that now have to be kind of redone. And I want to be clear that I fully support that those systems are redone. But I think that there are times where it's like, I don't think that every admin is having conversations like this in preparation of if a kid is non-binary or wants to transition or whatever it might be. I think that is like the concerning part. And part of that is that administrators and educators already have such a full load and it is already like a huge job. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, now how do we essentially restructure everything to make sure that every kid who comes to this school feels welcomed? It's a very, I think, an interesting time to experience. And I'm sure as a teacher, you can relate to that. But I mean, even coaching volleyball, like we had, I think, quite a few kids in our volleyball program that are non-binary, and just like the process of taking out gender in my coaching or gender in education and just kind of watching our language, I think is something that's really important. And I think that it's kind of another interesting lens that you are at an all boys school, like, and a Catholic school. So I think that those are other separate kind of identifiers that might, I don't mean this in a bad way, like might be a little bit more behind maybe a public school, who has kind of a larger population of all genders, I guess.
Yeah, and I would say that our school, in terms of we would be behind, not necessarily in the Catholic department, just because of how we kind of take and I am not Catholic in the slightest. And I would say that not a lot of our kids are. They would say that you would ask them, what are you? And they would say that they're Catholic, but that doesn't mean that they go to mass every Sunday. But in terms of that, I think that actually makes us, I guess, more progressive, just in terms of how inclusive that part of our school makes it. I think that where we are behind is educating our boys on what that potentially would even look like. Which how you said, kind of restructure. I feel like that's like for the lack of a pun, like nails on a chalkboard for administrators, because they don't want to restructure, because they know that takes man woman power. It takes time. It takes meetings that educators inherently don't want to go to.
It takes money,
right? So yeah, I think in terms of our religious influence, that wouldn't be as big of a deal as it were to be the all boys portion.
Yeah, interesting conversations. I feel like if you don't have someone who teaches or works at or is a student of an all boys school, these are not things that I think about often. I think about them in public school settings quite often, but you forget that there's all these other communities, I guess, so to speak, that I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. And maybe part of it is if you're a parent of a child who has expressed some of those things to you, maybe you make the decision not to send them to an all boys school. So I guess there could be, decisions that potentially keep kids out of, an all boys school or an all girl school for whatever reason.
Right.
Brooks, with our last 15-ish minutes, are there things masculinity related that we have not asked about that you want to make sure that we're asking you or talking about? I have a few questions, but I wanted to give you space too to see if there's anything that you for sure wanted to talk about.
No, I don't think I'm burning in terms of making sure that that's something gets heard. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Understood.
wherever you guys want to go, I'm totally okay with.
Okay. Are we okay pivoting off school a little bit for a second? Okay.
For sure.
One other I would say sub theme of this month has been the conversation around friendships and masculinity. And I feel like you're someone who has had some really good male friendships in your life. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how you I don't know, this sounds like a weird phrase, but deepen those friendships or move past traditional stereotypes of masculinity in order to have the depth that I know you as a person, so I know that you're probably not comfortable with a super superficial friendship. So I'm just curious what that process has looked like for you. And yeah, I guess that's the end of the question.
So I guess I'll start with in terms of the deep friendships that I do have. My deepest friendships are with my volleyball teammates, and I think that where that comes from is our strength and conditioning coach. His name is Craig. Shout out Craig. What he would say sometimes is he would, as we're doing resistance runs for 30 minutes, he would say, all right, it's time to embrace the suck, right? This is gonna suck, but it's gonna be good because you're all going through it together. That was kind of one of the biggest things that kind of made us close, is kind of looking to the right and to the left of you and seeing someone be like, this fucking sucks so bad, and I do not want to do this, but I will do it because I'm going through it with you to my right and you to my left. So that's, I think, one of the biggest things that kind of got me with my relationships to this point. I think that the other thing is just kind of taking the time to kind of understand my male friends kind of inside and out, not just in terms of kind of what makes them tick, but just kind of what I like about them. I will always say that sometimes, in terms of my early life, I would try to emulate attributes of male role models in life, like my dad or my uncles, because that would promote kind of a sense of nostalgia right now, I guess, if that makes sense. Trying to do things like them that kind of harkens back to a time where I was either happy or learned something. And I think that is inherently kind of like a Midwest thing, if that makes sense. Just in terms of how you want to interact with someone on a kind of a deeper level. There are a lot of times where I would call these people my family, or my parents always check in and say, ask them how they're doing, which they do that sometimes before they ask me how I'm doing, right? It's just kind of a very knit community, but I think it's promoted by at least in terms for me, the athletic side of it, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like sports can do that.
Oh yeah.
I think I agree, but I think it's so interesting, the look to your right, look to your left, embrace this suck. That is definitely I think fosters that connection. But when I think about just the way that I imagine that you are with your male friendships, it's so much more caring than that. Kind of abrasive, like we're in this for the suck kind of a thing. Like I just, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would imagine that like friends of yours feel maybe more comfortable coming to you with like the more sensitive, like I'm really struggling kind of a conversation than maybe they would be with other people. And I think that's so special, and that's like such a big like that's been just throughout our masculinity like theme is like for people who identify as male, it's kind of hard to go and have that friendship moment. Whereas like for us three, it's inherent, like a little bit more. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I think for a decent amount of my friends kind of act as their therapist from time to time, either
Yeah.
if it's now or kind of earlier in our friendship. Um, yeah, the athletic portion of it is only for I guess other people to understand that um, that our friendship isn't just the fact that we are forced to be here. It's the fact that I like being here with you, right? Like I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't here with you or next to you or running with you. I wouldn't be doing this alone.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of promotes that sense of camaraderie that I think my friend group is very it's in terms of my male friendships, it is very kind of it's very caring, it's very loving, and I don't really know how that works. We're just very into kind of how everyone is doing, and we're at that point of our lives where it's kind of getting a little more serious. But I think that caring aspect of it is inherently masculine. At school, just to pivot back to school, the word brotherhood is used kind of all the time. It's a very big buzzword in that sense. But I think that is inherent on the fact that you care for someone deeper than you thought that you could care about yourself. Which, if you take that in terms of how that presents itself in someone who identifies as a male or a woman, in terms of just me identifying as a male, it feels deeper. It feels more, I guess, unbreakable in that sense.
Well, like I feel like the term brotherhood or like sisterhood, if I'm going back to my sorority days, TBT, is like, I mean, at the end of the day, that term is just denoting that you care about people like siblings. Like it's past just a level of friendship. But I mean, I didn't feel my sorority, I want to be clear. But I think like that's kind of the point of that term. And I think like those friendships can, like, I would view Makena and Lara like siblings basically. I mean, we don't really fight. Like I imagine that I would have a sibling, but I don't know, I'm just siblingless. But yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. Makena, Lara, final questions?
I think we covered it all. We touched on a lot of things.
I don't have a final question, but I just want to give some props to Brooks for putting up with us pushing pretty hard, because I think that we pushed on some of these questions, and I think that these weren't questions that we had prepped of like how does gender play into your dynamics at an all boys school, and so I think that we just appreciate you showing up for those questions, and I mean that's not always like the easiest thing, so thanks for that.
Yeah.
I love being pushed. So I almost said to Mallory, I was like, I almost don't want to know what questions you're going to ask me, just to like,
oh, exciting.
Yeah.
Spice it up a little bit. I don't know.
You do strike me as the kind of person that would really thrive in like parliamentary debate where they like give you that topic right beforehand. Yeah.
Ooh, that makes me sweat. Cool. That idea.
No, thank you.
I was on my parliamentary debate team in high school, so
nice.
It's fine. Brooks,
can I ask a fun question?
Yeah,
actually,
always
what
fun
is,
questions.
What's your favorite book to teach about, or in your curriculum?
That's a
great
great question.
Ken.
That's too hard, Makena. We can't answer that.
Yeah. So I would probably say there's two. One is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was made into a movie in the 60s with Jack Nicholson, which is really fun to teach, and the kids like it a lot. But I think my favorite book to teach is Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Yeah, we just finished that up with my AP seniors. That's the book that we read. It's just very layered, not only in terms of the kind of illusions that it gets to. It's inherently
illusions.
Very,
that's such a triggering term from AP.
It's very, very multi-layered, not only in terms of kind of the different narratives, because there's three people telling their story kind of at the same time in like a frame narrative setting, and then it alludes to many different biblical works that kind of factor into the creator versus the created kind of relationship. It's really fun to see the kids read it, because the way in which the protagonist, Dr. Frankenstein, kind of talks is very kind of educated and elevated, and they kind of miss things that he does, which in my opinion, like, makes him a dickhead. He's because at the beginning they're like, oh, we love Frankenstein, he's like pushing scientific endeavors, and then I won't spoil it for anyone who's listening or hasn't read it yet, but it's great. It's my sister's and my mom's, like, one of their favorite novels, so they kind of inspired me to teach it too.
Well, this has become a literary podcast now. I honestly don't know if I've ever read Frankenstein like cover to cover. Not.
I've never picked it up. I've never done that.
Me either. We read it in high school, but I don't
right now.
I don't think I ever like read the whole thing.
Well, I've got at least 75 free copies, so I will send you.
Okay, I'll give you my address.
Yes, I'll send you a copy.
Brooks, any final thoughts before we close?
Well, I just want to say thank you for you ladies for having me on. It was when Mallory kind of re-asked me kind of again if I wanted to be on, I jumped at the opportunity, because not only do I like talking to you three, even though I just met Makena, what is that, 45 minutes ago. I think that what you guys do is really cool, just in terms of kind of how you guys present it in a very kind of forum type of way. I would say that just in terms of my teaching experience, I love what I do, even though that sometimes it may get confusing in terms of how things are talked about. I think that teaching is one of the best decisions that I have made in my entire life. Not only because of how it's impacted me now, but just how it's impacted me developmentally. I always tell my kids I tell them when they walk in the door every single day, I tell them, it's good to see all of you. I appreciate you all being here, because showing up is half of the battle. But at the end of the year, I always tell them thank you, because they teach me more about myself than I will ever be able to teach them about English. The more that I can kind of promote that, the more I'm kind of doing my job. So thanks.
They're so lucky to have you.
Yeah, that kind of made me emotional.
I love that. Well, Brooks,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. This has been a joy. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Have the loveliest day ever.
Have a great week.
Thanks, Brooks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Recording?